XtremeData DBX software has been designed to work on the cloud environment, and as a demonstration of this, I will show you how to set up XtremeData software on an Amazon Web Services in approximately 15 minutes. Before you get started, you will need an Amazon Web Services account, the user ID and password for that, and you'll need a public key for secure remote access. We follow a simple two-step process. First, we set up the cluster by creating a security group. We instantiate a head node and the data nodes for the cluster. We then bring up the cluster by getting remote access. We initialize and start the cluster, and then we kick off the DBX instance on that cluster, and you're ready to begin your analysis. We're going to start this project from the Amazon Web Services login screen. You're going to want to switch your video resolution to 720p or you won't be able to see all the detail in the later screens. We use EC2 services. The dashboard on the left shows all the resources you'll be using to build this project. It shows the instances of the clusters that have been created, the Amazon machine images, AMIs, where XtremeData software can be found, persistent storage that will be used to store your data before it gets loaded into your database. And then we also have the security down here, and the security group is something we need to create to isolate your data from everybody else. Go on ahead and call that guest 4. Everything will be guest 4. We need to add ports. We need to apply the rules. The security group has been created. We will now go to the AMIs where you'll find XtremeData software. We choose private images, and you may have to wait some time for this to load. There, XtremeData's AMIs have loaded by now, and we're going to use the latest version, and we're going to instantiate a head node. We launch. We only have one head node. We'll choose a medium-sized node for the head node. And we will attach EBS optimized storage for faster data loading from the persistent volumes. We'll choose a zone, and we'll have to remember that zone. We need to use it for all the data nodes in the cluster as well. We're going to call our cluster guest 4 cluster. We're going to add an EBS volume. We're going to verify that it added down here. We need to now name our head node. This will show up in the instance menu. We have to choose the public key that matches our private key on our own remote access system. We choose the security group that we just created. We launch the head node. And now we go to the instances. We search for our guest 4 head node, and there it is. We select it, and we wait until we see the IP address show up below. This EC2 value is the IP address. We copy it. We're going to use it for the cluster data nodes. Now we choose a data node. We launch that. We're going to put 4 in this particular cluster, and we're going to choose them to be slightly larger. You can choose almost anything on this menu, and we need to make sure it ends up in the same zone. We continue. We put in the same cluster name for the head. Shift, Enter, paste, continue. We add an EBS volume to each of the data nodes. We verify that this has occurred. EBS. We name them. Guest 4 data. We need to have the same public key, and we need to have the same security group. And then we launch all 4 nodes. We go to the instances. And now we see our guest 4 cluster coming up. Our head node is already up, and the data nodes are initializing. Since the head node's already up, we can begin the remote access process. I'm opening up a PuTTY window, and I'm going to load up configuration for EC2 access. The details for this are covered elsewhere, but we do need to put in the IP address. And it's looking for the public-private key password. There, we've logged in, and we need to wait until all the data nodes have initialized before we initialize the cluster within the DBX environment. So we come back to this screen, and we can hit the refresh button occasionally until that occurs. Okay, the head node and all 4 data nodes have initialized, so now we can initialize the cluster. And we choose 4 nodes. That's how many we've put on the cluster. We start the cluster. And now we start the XtremeData software. And while that's initializing, we can go ahead and try to get the Windows access. XDadmin, XDA, DM. The login is DBX, DBA. The password is DBA, DBX. We're going to create a new node set for this environment. And we're going to call it guest node set. And we're going to include all 4 data nodes, but we're going to put 2 virtual nodes on each data node. It's effectively 8 nodes. And now we are going to create a new server using the node set we just created. We're going to call that new server guest serve. We're going to give it a port name that nobody else has. And we're going to give it data at the head node of volumes, temp, db temp, and then the server name. We submit that. The server has now appeared. So we select it and we start it. The server has now started, and now we can go ahead and mount our persistent volume that will give us some data to work with on this database. In this particular case, it's guest volume. It is in the 1D zone. We'll go ahead and attach it to our guest 4 head node. And we'll go to our PuTTY window, and we're going to need to mount that. So we need to log in as root. We need to make a directory destination for this. We mount it. Data is ready to be found. We need to now log in as our project login. This would be you in a normal situation. We now go get our script. That's going to be a very small example of what we can do here. And we run our script. And all it's going to do is create a table, put a few rows in the table, and then spit them out to the screen. And there it is. The database has been initiated. If we're not happy with it, we just simply log out We go back to our instances. We be very careful to only select what we want to shut down right now that we own. And we scroll down and we're happy with that. And there it is. In real time, less than 13 minutes to bring up a cluster, run database operations on it, and shut it down. That is the future of computing. In the future, instead of tuning the performance of your company to match the restrictions of your hardware, you can now tune your hardware to match the needs of your company. Please call XtremeData if you have any questions. Thank you for your time.